Okay, in this video, we're going to recreate this document here. It's not going to be an line for line recreation. We'll leave out some stuff, but it'll get you the idea of how you can create this on your own. It's not as hard as it looks, and it's actually very simple. All right, so we're going to start with a new document. For this, I'm going to make one that's 5,433 pixels wide by 3,543 pixels tall with a resolution of 72, color mode RGB. I'm going to click OK. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new layer, and I'm going to title this layer Ocean Color, or let's call it Underwater Color. Watercolor. Right, and this is going to give us the color of our underwater. And to do that, we're going to create a simple gradient. Let's open this up. Simple gradient. We're going to do a dark blue. So we're going to choose a nice dark blue. To a lighter blue. And we're just going to make sure that this is set up here to linear gradient. We're going to grab down here and we're going to drag up to about there. All right. So we have a nice dark area going into a lighter area. Next up, we're going to place a sky in. So we're going to place embedded. And we've got a lot of cool images to work with here. So I'm going to take sky and I'm going to place it. And it comes in a little small, so that's okay. I'm just going to drag and make it bigger. There we go. And we've got some nice resolution here. It actually works out well. I am going to clean up a little bit. I'm going to grab the healing brush. And I'm going to come over here. And I need to rasterize my layer now that I've placed it. So I'm going to right-click Rasterize Layer. And I'm going to make my image bigger. I'm going to sample a little bit of the sky next to it, and I'm going to click, and that gets rid of that nasty brown spot there. All right, so we've got that in. We've got the sky, we've got the underwater piece, and it looks kind of weird. It doesn't really fit. I'm going to select the underwater color, and I'm going to adjust the levels and kind of get it a little darker. There we go. So that way, whatever you start out with, you can always modify later on. All right, so next, I'm going to lay in a seabed. So I'm going to place the seabed, place embedded. Let's find the seabed here. There we go, the seafloor. And it looks nice and cool. We'll make it fit the screen. I'm going to drag it down a little bit. And I'm going to squish it. Now, normally I don't do this, but for this type of image, I think it'll work out well if I just kind of give it a little squish. And find a place and boom, lay it into position. So now we have the seafloor. But what we need to do is we need to do a couple of things to it. So first, I'm going to change my layer mode to color dodge. And it kind of shows through a little bit. And I'm also going to take, and I'm going to kind of paint out the background using a layer mask so that I just get the bottom. And we want to paint with the black. So I just get the bottom there. That's exactly what I'm looking for. Very cool. Okay, so we've painted out the bottom. Then I'm going to do a level on it. Excuse me. Do a level on it. Make sure I'm on this. Pop a level. Come in. Just kind of darken it up just a little bit. That's cool. And now we have this nice little smart level here. We've got all kinds of stuff. But, that doesn't look exactly like I want it. Let me show you a trick. We're going to click on this. We're going to hold the Shift key down. We're going to hit plus. And it's going to jump through the various looks of my layer modes. And until I can come up with one that kind of blends a little bit better. So we're coming through, we're finding one that has a nice little blend to it. That's pretty good. I like that. All right, well, let's change the opacity down to about 50%, and that gives us that underwater look. So you can change the opacity by just hitting 5 to 50, or you can change it right here. Okay, so we now have lighten. We now have 50%. I'm going to I'm going to go underneath that, and I'm going to place a cityscape. So place embedded. We're going to place a cityscape now. Let's find a nice city. Did you know that you can click on this and hit the space bar and it will come up with bigger items? And you can just use your down arrow and go through. Now let's see if we can find a nice city in here somewhere. A big fish. And just pushing down through, coming up with all kinds of cool little things we can put. There's a Statue of Liberty. Oh, look, there we go. A nice skyline. Close that. We have it selected. We can place. Let's open it up. Very cool. We have a nice skyline now. So I want it to be down about here maybe. Let's grab our seafloor and move it down. Now I want to blend this in to the seafloor, and because I've got opacity on this, I have to go and create another layer mask here. And we're just going to blend that in, just like that. There we go. Real nice and neat. Easy peasy. So we've got a nice blend on that. My layer I'm going to set to normal, and I may even shrink it just a little bit more. And you know what? I may just duplicate this. So I'm going to bring it down because I don't want it to be overpowering, but I'm going to cheat a little bit. I'm going to hold my Option key down. I'm going to duplicate the layer. I'm going to transform and flip it horizontal. And then I'm going to kind of bring this out here like this. And it's going to be kind of diffuse and underwater. So with that, I'm going to select both of them and I'm going to merge them together so that we've got this. Now, I'm going to show you another little technique. I'm going to create another layer mask. I'm going to take my brush tool, except I'm going to set my opacity to about 50%. And then I'm going to paint over it. Now look, it just kind of blends with the background now. So a little 50%. I could probably go like 70%. Yeah, that's a little much. We can undo 60%. There, now it kind of looks like it's underwater, in the distance, in the background. So we've got some cool things there. All right, so next I'm going to lay in Big Ben because I want Big Ben to be my primary. So I'm going to place embedded, and I'm going to find Big Ben in here. There he is right there. I'm going to place him. I'm going to make sure he's big enough to where I can trim off some of the bottom, and that some of the upper top goes through. Now notice he's under my sky, so I'm going to move him above the sky because I need it to pop through. And I'm going to take, and I'm going to change it to 50%, maybe 20%. That way I can kind of get an idea. I'm going to grab my tools, make sure that my opacity is back up to 100%. I can do that by hitting 0. And then I'm going to come in here and just kind of brush so it blends into the background a little more. Okay. And I'm going to hit my V tool to do my direct selection tool. And I'm going to hit 0 to bring Big Ben back up to 100%. All right, so Big Ben is now in there at 100%. I've got a little blending at the bottom. That looks good. Now, I'm going to create what's called shadows. So I'm going to create a new layer above this. And I'm going to command click. Notice how I did that. I held the command key down. I clicked the image here, the thumbnail. And I'm going to fill that with black. Okay, so I'm going to go edit, fill, and I'm going to change it to black. Oh, sorry, got to change my contents to foreground color or black. That's the one. 100%. Boom. Now we have black in there. I can take and play with this now. I'm going to change my opacity of this to 60%. And I'm going to kind of create a little shading effect. So I'm going to grab and create a layer mask. And I'm going to grab my nice tool here. And I'm going to kind of, so it blends a little bit. So we've got a nice blending effect in there. But it's so, normal. It doesn't really match anything. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do another little cheat. I'm going to do what's called a color overlay. And I'm going to select kind of the background here. And I'm going to fill, edit fill, the foreground color, which is my blue. And then I'm going to control click over the Big Bend layer. See how it turns into that? I'm going to put my cursor between the layers. That way it just covers that. And so that's nice. I've got a nice overlay, but it's blue. It doesn't really fit anything. So I'm going to change my opacity of this to about 50%. And now it's sitting in the ocean. It's got a little blue tinge to it. We've got some shadows that I'm going to drop in here below the blue tinge. So now look, we've got our shading effects, we've got our color overlay, and everything is looking good. The only thing I don't want is I don't want above the water to have a color overlay, but I'll fix that in a minute. All right, so next I'm going to throw in the ocean surface, and the ocean surface is easy. I'm just going to place the ocean. I'm going to do this below Big Bend, but I'm going to do it above the sky. Okay, so I'm going to place embedded, and I'm going to grab my ocean. Here's my ocean. I'm going to place it, and it's a big ocean. I'm going to squish the snot out of this so it looks like the surface of the ocean. Instead of a big, long, I'm going to bring it down to about there. So now we have a nice blue, we have underwater, and we have the top of the ocean. Now, this blue's still a little much. I may lighten it up just a little bit, just to kind of give it that, there we go. We've got some nice shading in there. And we can play with the shading as we go. If we don't like the color of our blue, we can easily change it. We can hit Command U and click Colorize. And we can bring up the saturation or down, depending on what you want. And then change its color hue in here like this until we get a pretty decent look. I like that. But the seafloor kind of looks a little different now, so let's just click on it and we can cycle again through our, there we go. Now I like that. And that's our color dodge. Okay, so we're getting some nice detail. We've got something above the surface. So now that I know where that surface is, I'm going to select Big Bend above that surface, and I'm going to delete out that blue. So if we look, we clicked on the blue layer and I've deleted out the blue. All right, so we've got a nice underwater scene. I'm good with that. Now I want to lay in a splash, and to do that, we're going to load a brush. So we're going to go up here, and we're going to go under our gear icon, and we're going to load brushes. And inside this same folder, there's a brushes124.abr. I'm going to open it, and it's given me some nice splash brushes. So I can actually click on these and kind of come out and make them bigger and smaller. I like this one. Make it a little smaller. And use your bracket keys to make it bigger and smaller. I'm going to hit D and X. And what that did is D set it to default and X will switch back and forth. So I want white. So I'm going to click, make sure that I'm in the layer above. Okay, I'm going to click. There we go. We've got our splash. I'm going to select this area here. Make sure it's right on that line, and I'm going to delete the splash below. And now we have a nice splash. So that's how simple it is to do this so far. Nothing complicated, just using a bunch of layer masks, things like that. So let's do something that is just a little bit more complicated. I'm going to create what's called a light. Now, before I do that, I want you to look at the surface of the ocean, and I want you to look at the light. The light's over here, but here the light's over here. So we need to change one or the other. I'm going to go ahead and change the surface of the ocean. I'm going to Command T, and I'm going to flip it horizontally. Now my lights are all coming from the same direction, and it looks a lot better. So with this, I'm going to create a really cool effect. And to do that, I need to make sure that I'm just above my blue layer. I'm going to put it above the seafloor, but under the sky. And this is important. You want to make sure you're under the ocean and the sky, otherwise it'll bleed through. All right, so I'm going to go down here and create what's called a curves layer. Notice it created curves. And I'm going to drag this center up so it gets nice and bright. Now look, it's doing it to the whole thing, but that's not what I want. To get around that, we're going to fill the entire layer with black. Okay, so paint bucket tool, black, fill the whole layer, goes back to where it was. Perfect. Now, with white, I'm going to grab my brush, and I'm going to grab a simple brush and reduce the size some. There we go. And I want the light rays to come from this way, so I'm going to just start painting little globules. And it's just clicking, painting, clicking, painting. So painting little globules. Okay, from here, I'm going to take and I'm going to go up under Filter. I'm going to go down to Blur, and I'm going to do not a lens blur. I always miss this. Filter, Blur, go down through here, Radial Blur. I'm going to set it to Zoom, Best, and the amount I'm going to set up to 100. Now I can grab the center thing and push it up here so that all the rays go down this direction. And that's what I want. Okay? I click OK and I wait. And it will create my radial blur. And watch what happens to my blobs. They turn into rays. Look at that, sun rays. Not quite bright enough for my liking, so I'm going to add another level. I'm going to just add another level. There we go. Now I've got some bright rays coming down. I can select all three of those and move them if I want it a little different. Make sure that you are being careful when you move it, because you need to make sure that everything is black. So you might have to fill. See, we've lost the black over here. So you'll just have to go into each layer and fill it back with black. Each one. Once you move it, there we go. All right, so we've got our nice little sun rays beaming down. And that's the hardest part. Everything else with this image, if you take a look at it, is just basically doing the same thing, just adding characters in, bubbles. There's a bubble brush. I used a splash brush for this, but blended it. And it's all about using your blending modes. Now, this is brighter than the other. So what I like to do is when I'm done up at the top, I can create a levels layer, and then I can adjust the levels to make everything a little darker. And that way we've got a nice contrast. And again, if you don't like something, you can always go back and change the colors. So as you can see, it's a simple way to do complex items. Spend more time with your blends, your brushes, and everything, and you can easily create this scene as well.